1, 2.
Check, check, check. 1, 2, 1,
A,
2.
B, C, D, E, F, G.
I bomb atomically, Socrates' philosophies, hypotheses. Can't define how I'll be dropping these mockeries. Lyrically perform on robbery, flee with the lottery, possibly. We're live? We're live.
Wu-Tang Killer.
We're live.
We're live.
We're live. So, first of all, thank you to everyone who's joined us tonight for the Artist Talk for the Space Between, and thank you to all of you who are tuning in via the live stream as well as on Instagram Live. My name is Dr. Fahamu Pecou. I am the artist behind this project, The Space Between, and I'm here with my good friend, my good brother, my compadre, my rider, my boy, Edward M. Garnes Jr.
All right.
Tell people who tell
Said the
people
whole
about yourself.
name.
Yes.
Well, I'm a sweet tea enthusiast from Atlanta, Georgia. I am the founder. Yeah, I don't drink, so for all my people that think that I'm drinking the bourbon, this is sweet tea. I'm the founder of From Afros To Shelltoes, a community organization I've had for about 20 years. We focus on emotional healing and cultural productions that bridge the generation gap between hip hop and the elders. So bridging my parents' generation and my generation. So we do panels like this. We do a lot of work, as you know, with Black psychology and emotional healing. We've been spending a lot of our time dealing with radical healing in this space of a pandemic of racism and oppression, you know, and COVID. So, you know, it's a lot. So, I mean, I'm just a brother from Atlanta, man. Got a little bit of that white folks education and grandma common sense, you know? And I do what I do, you know?
That's what's up, man. So, as you know, this is the Artist Talk for this project, The Space Between. And I'll speak a little bit about the project in a moment, but I just wanted to kind of lay, I guess, like a ground rule or
we got rules?
so
okay, go ahead. I'm ready.
For the conversation. Well, no, it's more of a clarification, right? So rather than a formal artist talk, this is more of a conversation. Like this is, you guys are getting a snapshot into what happens when me and Ed get together. Okay. You know, it's literally bourbon. He got the sweet tea. We sitting somewhere and we talking shit, and that's what we do.
Okay.
All right. But The Space Between is a project that seeks to image and normalize expressions of care, compassion, love, vulnerability between and amongst Black men. Yeah. It is an interactive installation that features a digital mirror piece that when you encounter it, video portraits of Black men appear on screen and exchange affirmations of love and care. But there's also a 20-minute documentary where the subjects of the interactive piece are interviewed to talk about their experiences as Black men with this question of love. And so our conversation tonight will really kind of live in that space as well. Ed was one of the gracious subjects in the project. And so I thought it would be appropriate, I mean, again, because we do this all the time anyway,
we
but
do.
I thought it would be appropriate to have this talk and this conversation with you here tonight. So again, thank you everybody for tuning in. Let's get into it.
Let's go.
So I wanted to kind of kick things off by talking about the impetus behind this project. So a couple years ago, I had an opportunity to sit on a panel at the Black Star Film Festival in Philadelphia. Shout out to Black Star Film Festival and Mayory Holmes and the whole crew up there in Philly. But I was on this panel with the authors Jason Reynolds and Damon Young. And the panel was billed as this opportunity for us to talk about the ways in which we image Black masculinity in our work. But rather than us talking about what we do in our work, it really just ended up like it was almost like nobody else was in the room. Yeah, there was a bottle of whiskey moving around, and we all got pretty open, you know, with each other about our experiences as Black men coming up, and the ways that we have you know, tried to work with, around, and through, you know, the challenges of Blackness, of masculinity, in a number of ways. But as the conversation went on, Jason started sharing this story about a crew of friends that he's had since he was like 8 or 9 years old.
Oh, okay.
And he talked about the fact that, you know, amongst his crew of friends, it was never a strange thing for them to exchange, you know, expressions of love to one another, to say "I love you" to one another. From an early age, and you know, they're now in their like 30s and 40s, and they're still together. They're godparents to each other's children, blah blah blah. But he talked about the fact that was a thing between them, that they said that to each other and continue to say that to each other often. He even shared that at one point, one of the homies in the crew like got jumped or something like that, and got his hands on a gun, and he was like, you know, ready to go get retribution. But the crew showed up and they surrounded him like, that's not us. We don't do that. You know what I mean? And that possibly, you know, potentially saved his life, you know? Damon, on the other hand, talked about, you know, the fact that his father was the more emotive one, you know, between his parents, right? Like his mother was a little bit more like the, you know, tough love, but his dad was like, you know, generally pretty tender, you know? Anyway, as they talked about their experiences and stuff like that, it just made it more apparent to me just how absent that kind of expression was in my life growing up. Like I grew up in a space where nobody ever said "I love you" to anybody, like men or women. I didn't grow up hearing that. You know what I'm saying? And even when I first heard it, I might have been maybe 21, 22 years old. I was talking to my sister on the phone, and we got ready to hang up. She was like, "I love you," and I was like, "What? What do you mean you love me?" You know what I'm saying? Like, and it really like fucked with my head. But I realized, like, you know, for me over the years, it's been a journey in learning not only how to express and articulate the love that I feel for my friends and family, but also how to accept it when it's offered to me, right? And so this project, this experience, is really about, you know, creating a space. That's why it's called a space between, but creating a space for us to have those kinds of conversations.
Yeah. I don't know, you said a mouthful. So love in my life. I have to go back to Louisiana Avenue, Vicksburg, Mississippi. My grandma, Elizabeth Lowe, in those lessons. You know, I quote her all the time, right? And so I grew up in a very loving family. My family is huge. As you know, I'm always going to a family reunion or something, but I would credit my grandmother, Elizabeth Lowe, my mother, Carolyn Garnes, for instituting that sense of love. And while my dad, when we were coming up, never said love, it was those lessons that my dad, you know, taught me as far as expressing love. I talked about in the movie, like the sacrifices my father made, you know, so he was a typical Morehouse man, you know, you could tell a Morehouse man, but you can't tell him much, right? You know what I'm saying? We used to argue, you know, coming up. I mean, I remember we were doing philosophical debates on Jordan versus Dominique, you know, but with my father, it was the lessons, you know, the sacrifices, like picking me up to go to all my sports games, you know, leaving work, working a part-time job at a liquor store. I found that out when I was older. My dad worked a part-time job so I could still stay in private school.
Wow.
You know, so sacrifice was what my dad, you know, taught me, but lessons, you know, like things to stay alive, like always get a receipt. I don't care if you're getting searched, you're gonna get you a receipt before you go out the thing, you know, before you go out the store. So I really, you know, grew up with love in my household, even though my dad never expressed it. I look at that sacrifice. But the last 10 years of my dad's life, I think my dad knew he was gonna pass. The last 10 years of my life, me and my dad would have these lunches where we would just talk about anything. I mean, we would hug, we would say, "I love you," and I never questioned it. Because you know if you say something, it's gonna stop. You know, I ain't gonna be like, "Daddy, why you hugging me?" Oh, it feels so good, I ain't had a hug. But you know, the last 10 years of his life, man, we really got to expound on our relationship. My dad did not know his father. You know, my dad grew up in poverty, like, you know, dirt floor poverty. Went on valedictorian of his high school, went on to Morehouse, developed an accent. "Hi, Edward, how are you doing?" You know? So, you know, I just see that sacrifice, and I think that's love. And also what you were saying about brothers, man, I grew up with some cool brothers that I'm down with to this day. I mean, you met some of them at my wedding, Chris and Damien. Just talked to them over text, you know. My boy Jabril, I mean, we express love and support for each other in a way that I think society would not understand. You know, as black men, we're misunderstood. Like, we just hard all the time. Like, we can't be vulnerable. But, you know, when stuff hit the fan for me this summer, who did I call? You, Damien, Chris, that same crew of people. But I think it's incumbent upon us to make known that we as black men have a value system based on love and support, and that's not foreign to us.
Yeah, and I think that's the part that was really important to me with this project, was the fact that, yeah, it may not always come across through those 3 words, I love you, but that love is evident in the relationships that black men have with each other. You know, I saw this meme not too long ago that talked about, you know, the way black people laugh with each other. You know what I'm saying? Like, we don't just ha 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 ha. Like, our laughter is like,
exactly. Like, boy, you better get out of here.
You know, you falling on the floor, you jumping on each other's back, you rolling around. You know what I mean? But it's like, laughter is a space of intimacy, I think, amongst black people. You know, when we talk about music and you see us, like, you know, doing our dance routines, or like, you know, like the picture I posted today. You know, it's like all of these different ways that love manifests or gets expressed, that oftentimes it's misinterpreted, or actually more so than misinterpreted, just underrepresented. You just don't see it, right? And so for me, it was important to, you know, try to create a space where those kinds of expressions get normalized.
I think that, you know, it's important because I knew I was going to be emotional when you told me to talk about love in that particular project, because that space of vulnerability, like, I couldn't have done that project with many people, right? Because you've seen me at my best, you've seen me at my worst, so I think you got the best out of me because of that. But I think that, you know, for I would just use us as an example. The vulnerability in which we express is that we come to each other for everything, the happy moments, the low moments. When stuff hits the fan, we call each other. I mean, I remember when I was in a crazy relationship, and this brother Fahamu helped me move my stuff out of my house to my dad's house to make it look like I had moved. And then 2 weeks later, we moved all my stuff back in, right? So only your brother, you allow yourself to be vulnerable. And I think about, you know, those moments and what they mean to me. And then I think it translates into the work that we do, you know, so like, even though we're down to earth people, we're academics, right? You know, so when I'm writing, you know, that letter for you for Emory, which will become, you know, your PhD walk, I have a history to talk about. Like, I can talk about your trajectory and your growth because we've been vulnerable enough to share. And I think that the more we see that, you know, amongst brothers, like, it's not foreign to me. What's so funny, you know, as a black male researcher, is that you hear what people have to say. You know, black men don't do surveys, so you might not want to do your research project because black men don't read. I mean, like, hearing these things in the academy that are so foreign, you know, I look at our relationship and the relationships that I talked about earlier. You know, we defy the status quo on a daily basis, but it's not something that gets a lot of press. Well, now, if I slap you and we get to fighting outside the thing, you know, Ed shot Fahamu at the thing, we're going to get front page villain.
Right, exactly. They'll show that part, but they won't show the other side of it, right? You know, like, I was talking to my brother, Ross Anthony, last night. And we were talking about the ways in which, like, when you have a true brother, it's shoot first, ask questions later. Like, what you making me do right now is really whack. We're going to talk about this later, but we're going to do this work right now. You need me right now? We're going to handle this, but we're going to have a conversation about this later. You know, and there's this kind of dedication, you know what I mean, to one another, because in many respects, and this is something that I wanted to kind of address, is this perception of black men as being like hard and stoic. It's a necessity, right, in this world, because so much of the world is like, you know, it's literally like aiming darts at you, you know what I mean? And so you have to kind of have this exterior that reads as hard and tough, right? Like, I did an exhibition years ago called Hard to Death.
I remember that.
Right, and the whole, like, premise behind that that exhibition was that self-preservation, right, which is that hard exterior. Like, what happens when self-preservation becomes self-destruction? You know, like what happens when you can't move beyond that that facade of toughness? What happens when you lose the ability to communicate like your emotions because you've had to like shield them and shelve them and put them to the back so much just to make it from one day to the next, right? And so I think you even talk about this, like, you know, most Black men are dealing with like anxiety and depression issues. And it's just unaddressed because there really is no outlet, or it doesn't seem like there are many outlets for you outside of that relationship you might have with your brother or your barber or your, you know what I mean, or whatever it may be. But we find these like little moments, these little islands, you know, of respite throughout our lives that just, again, that don't get addressed or don't get imaged and imaged enough where it can really be healthy, right?
Yeah, I mean, what you're talking about, we say in the psych world is coping strategies, right? So Black men, we are always developing coping strategies, our emotional armor, protect ourselves from the tenets of white supremacy. So when you look at W. Du Bois, he talks about the psychological wage of whiteness, right? Knowing that the police are gonna serve and protect, knowing that the colleges are built around me, knowing I can have a messed up credit score and still get a mortgage as a white man, right? So that psychological wage of whiteness, we don't benefit from that. We're not benefactors of any privilege, right? We have privileges, you know, based on social identities, like, okay, if you go to school, you might have the privilege of getting a mortgage or getting a certain job, but we all know that, you know, Black life, you know, we are a permanent underclass, right? And so, you know, what a lot of my work with From Afros to Shelltoes and also my research speaks to is developing the coping mechanisms to deal with these dehumanizing messages that we get constantly. So how do we deal with that? You know, mentors, father figures, the barbershop, like we don't get our advice from credentialed psychologists. Like, oh, I'll call a Black psychologist and help me along with my coping strategy. We talk to our homies, we talk to our coaches. The barbershop becomes a respite for us.
We drink some whiskey.
Yeah, we drink sweet tea. I'm trying to get through the whole thing without drinking everything. But you know, we're trying to find an escape from white supremacy, right? And you know, I'm just glad we in a space where I could say that. When I found it From Afro to Shelltoes 20 years ago and I would say white supremacy, the whole room would be like, what? He said systemic racism. So I'm just glad to be in style right now, right? So Black life and Black manhood is a constant reclamation project to reestablish our dignity. You know what I'm saying? So we had to watch Master take our women, you know, beat our women, rape them, cut their bellies open, right? So we've always been trying to deal with the emotional trauma of being a man, but the system not allowing us to be able to express that.
Yeah. You know, I wanted to also make sure to talk about fatherhood and you know, in this equation as well, because I think that has also been a significant influence on the ways that you know, these expressions of love and vulnerability have really sort of surfaced for me. Like, for example, someone was in earlier today and we were kind of talking a little bit about, you know, the show, and you know, she was really moved by the work, and I was sharing with her that you know, it's still a work in progress for me to be comfortable in this space of like emotional vulnerability, right? Like my wife used to get on me all the time because when my son was younger, like maybe like 5, 6 years old, we might be walking through the store or something, and he would grab my hand, and I would kind of, you know, like, pull, you know what I mean? Like,
put your stuff together.
Why are you touching me? You know what I'm saying? Like, hey, you know, like, and I wasn't even aware that I was doing that. You know what I'm saying? And it was her pointing that out to me that really made me like conscious of it, but also made me be conscious of doing the opposite of that, right? And allowing him to, you know, like that was his way of expressing, like emoting, you know what I
Yeah.
mean, to me, oh, I'm happy to be with you, Dad, you know what I'm saying, like that kind of thing. You know, he's bigger now, he don't want nothing to do with me, but you know,
man.
but when he was little, you know, that was the thing, like, you know, I have so many pictures of us together when he was little. He always has a hand on me, like he's always touching me in some way, you know, and I didn't realize that there's harm in my snatching away, that is subtly teaching him that that's not okay. Right?
Yeah.
When it should be okay, right? It should be quite fine for him to express himself in that way. And so now I try to actively and intentionally model, you know, that kind of like, you know, softness for him, because it's important. That's how you develop emotional maturity, when you're allowed to express the full range of your emotions and not just stifled into like everything has to be stoic and hard and silent and, you know, just produce, you know.
Yeah, it's interesting because, you know, what I think about those toxic messages that we get very early on. You know, I was an athlete coming up, even though I have a dad bod now, you know, but, you know, back in the day, you know, brother could go. And so I just remember all those messages, like we would call it concussions now. I just remember being knocked out at a football game. They just call it getting your lights knocked out. And man, they put me back in the game like, Bill, man, I got a damn concussion. You know what I'm saying? But those are the messages that we give. You know, with my own father, you know, thank God I had my mother and my grandmother and aunts, you know, like my Aunt Bobby, my Aunt Ruth, who gave me, you know, that emotional nurturing that is necessary for a black man. And, you know, my mother being a librarian and giving me the arts like Nikki Giovanni, Sonia Sanchez. So I grew up with this authentic black self and emotional. And then I had the messages from my dad, don't let your emotions get you in trouble. So my dad was always trying to get me to tailor my emotions in situations and not let my emotions rule. So I got those mixed messages coming up, but it wasn't until I got older and understood oppression as to what my dad was saying. He was saying, as a black man, don't be so emotional to the point that the system can control you. But you know, you 10, you don't know what the hell he's saying. You know what I'm saying? You know, so how I look at it with my own son, you know, one of the things that I try not to do, I tried to raise my voice. You know, we used to being hollered at, get your ass in, I will throw something at your black ass. You can't do that with kids, man. You know what I'm saying? We are scarred, man. It's people that see, it's people that see house shoes right now and freeze up like, oh shit, I see a house shoe. You know
and listen, I don't own a belt to this day for that very reason.
Hey man, I hate belts. You know what I'm saying? I had to buy one to put my pants on. Because we remember. You know, y'all remember getting switches? You know,
you had to pick your own switch.
Yeah, go out there, baby. Pick you a switch. I picked the littlest one, and then I have to redo it. So just pick the right switch.
Right.
Okay.
Just take it. Just take it.
But you know, that's trauma in our DNA. You know, so you got slavery. You're getting your ass whooped by your parents and grandparents. They telling you they love you, but they whooping your ass. How can we build relationships when we used to get in our ass whooped? All right. So with my son, I try not to holler. And I do emotional check-ins. I mean, part of this is coming from my training as a counselor, but I'm trying to redo some things that I felt my parents should have done with us in expressing our emotions. I would ask him, what made you happy today? Oh, I went to Chuck E. Cheese, you know, we had a Nikki Giovanni book. What made you sad? When you didn't come pick me up from grandma's, you know, I was a little sad. So I do that constantly to get him used to expressing his emotions. What made you sad? What made you happy? If you don't know how you feel, let's articulate that. So we have regular conversations about that, and you know, allowing him to cry. Like I will let my son cry. Now I will tell him you can't cry about everything.
Exactly.
Like if I don't give you no more Nintendo bucks, that don't mean cry. You know, you can't have the iPad, that don't mean cry. You know, so I try to put that in context. Like I don't mind you crying, but we can't cry for everything. Right.
Or even, you know, a certain amount of crying. You know, like after 20 minutes and you still rolling around on the floor, now you're just being ridiculous, right? You know, but you know, I agree. Like I think that you know, the work of radical resistance, right? It requires us to unlearn what we were taught, right? And try to model something different than what was done before. right? And I think, sometimes we tend to be somewhat harsh on our parents because, they didn't do this for me or they didn't give me this, And for the most part, for many of them, they were just trying to survive too, right? And so, but we're in at a certain point, you are responsible for the decisions that you make, right? So like if I'm, continuing to operate from a space of trauma at 45 years old, that's on me at that point. You know what I mean? Like there's so much work that I can do for myself to kind of mitigate those traumas, right? And it really is just a matter of acknowledging them and being honest with myself and saying, okay, I don't like how this makes me feel, or I don't like this type of behavior in myself. What can I do to correct that? As opposed to just being like, oh, well, that's how my parents did it. This is how I got to do it,
Yeah, I mean, it's like, my parents were wonderful, man. When I look back on it, like I told my mama last night, I don't know how you did it with 3 boys. One is kicking my ass. I'm like, if I had 3 of y'all, I might throw house shoes. You know what I'm saying? Get your ass off the Nintendo, But I think that, my parents gave me everything that they could. One of the things that they prepared me for was just how brutal life would be as a black man. Like I remember going to this musty basement of a library watching Dr. Kawanza Kanjufu talk about the conspiracy to destroy black boys. Man, I was like 10 or 11, right? So giving me those particular tools in order to operate. But I think one of the things that we don't give credence to is just as black people, our vulnerability amongst white supremacy in the system has always served as a negative, right? So we get mixed emotions on expressing ourselves. So if we tell master too much, it's more licks, right? We say too much, even in academia, there's a cost in that. So finding that emotional balance in order to stay sane. But I think we underestimate how hard it is, especially for black men, to help seek. We do not help seek because in those moments of vulnerability, there's normally a cost. So that's why I got into counseling, and God bless my mentor, Dr. Joe White, who helped establish the discipline of black psychology. We are a resilient people, but we have to talk to other people that are skilled in emotional development, coping strategies in order for us to make this thing work, right? So we have to find a way to find those safe spaces, because the behaviors that you're talking about, everyone doesn't have the same exposure to.
Right.
And so like, it works for you, but what about the person who does not have the emotional resources? So that's what I try to do, as a mental health professional, is give people the tools as black folks to be their authentic selves, deal with the system, and still have a sense of vulnerability where you're expressing yourselves and being your true authentic self. Because part of it is that we rarely can be our authentic selves as black people, which where the anxiety and depression comes from, because when you can't fully emote and express, it goes 2 ways. You either externalize your angst, meaning that you go knock stuff out, tear up your community, shoot another brother, or you internalize it, which becomes depression, anxiety, cancer, so on.
Yeah, I mean, I just think, like, to that point, there's so much work that still needs to be done, right? But again, I feel I firmly believe in self-accountability.
Okay.
That this idea that we're at the effect of the world, right? Like, is fake news. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Like, again, at a certain point, we have to take responsibility for the way we behave, for the way we conduct ourselves, for the things we think, for the ways we limit ourselves, right? And like.
So self-inventory.
Self-inventory, but also just, like, for example, I think a lot about the impact that last year had on us as individuals, but also as a society. And I'm not talking about the COVID, the disease, but COVID, the stop. You know what I'm saying? Like, the world actually stopping and everybody having to sit still for this extended period of time. There's absolutely no reason anyone should not have a completely different perspective on this world that we live in, right? Because we've all had this, we were all forced to pause. And this was the thing that I think was the most generative aspect, right? Is that in that pause, I think so many people became aware of the things that we have built around ourselves that give us comfort, you know, that tell us, you know, that, you know, this is how things are supposed to go, right? So when the world stopped and it couldn't go that way anymore, we all figured out new ways to, you know, to get what we needed. We all figured out new ways to express ourselves. We all figured out new ways to like find joy, you know, and we realized that we could create what we want, that we don't have to wait for someone to, you know, and I think that's the challenge of the world prior to 2020. It's like everything was like kind of laid out, like this is how it goes. You got to do step 1, step 2, step 3, right? That interrupted everything. Step 1, 2, 3, that didn't exist anymore. So now we have to like reinvent. And so now I think, you know, even as Black men, like this is why I feel like this was like a really important kind of project, you know, to come out of that. Is because it reminds me personally that that what I want to see in the world, I can create. You know, like I don't have to look for it elsewhere. I can just create it. Yeah, and I mean that in an emotional space too, right?
I get it. You know, it's that James Brown ethos, like open the door, I get it myself. Right. You know what I'm saying? I feel you. I know for me, well, we always been in a white supremacist pandemic. I have to always say that, right? Especially since it's a free space. Because you know next week I can't say white supremacy 25 times, right? So I'm gonna get it all out now. But you know, I didn't know it was possible, but I got blacker over this break. Like, you know, I realized, I know y'all like, oh my God, he's already dark skinned. What does he mean? If he gets any blacker, he'll be blue black, right? So
you see, they had to bring out a light.
I know, they're like, dang, all we see is teeth. Okay, is this the installation for black teeth? All right. But what I mean, I got blacker. I realized as a Black academic, as a tenure track professor in psychology, which is already a discipline where I'm teaching about dead white men. Now I'm gonna supplement the hell out of it, but you know, theories of dead white men. I got blacker because I realized a lot of my angst and frustration was in those moments where I had to go with the status quo for the sake of getting my degree. Right. You know the sacrifices we have to make. But I said, you know what? I'm about to be black as hell after this pandemic, man. I say, I'm back to like who I was before I started my doctoral journey, because I realized how much of the problems that we have as Black people is rooted in these white supremacist notions of success, strategy, you know, and those things. So I had to get back to my African-centered self. So what did I do? Call on the ancestors, right? Make sure I had my you know, make sure I have my ancestor table up in the house. You know, make sure I got some Fahamu art. You know what I'm saying? Thank God for my teacher salary, because you know I got a little more Fahamu in my life. But you know, getting back to those strategies that my mentor Dr. White talked about, like we have these innate psychological strengths that we as Black people just have to tap into. You know, one is like improvisation. You know, it's not just, you know, rapping and being in a cipher, but if you can call and get that cell phone on 15 more days before they cut you off, improvisation, right? We already have a sense of resiliency, like from the cradle to the grave, we're gonna be resilient, right? A gallows sense of humor. We send each other crazy memes, you know, people dancing, you know, like laughing to keep from crying, as Langston Hughes would say. You know, then instituting what Dr. White would call, you know, connectedness to others. When you go to the barbershop, elders give you feedback, connectedness to others, spirituality. So tapping into those Black psychological strengths, you know, helped me go, and now it's go time. Like I can't look back, you know, and also being closer to finishing my doctoral degree, I'm back to having a sense of freedom where I can really be myself. But a lot of my turmoil was having to do things in a white-centric space a certain way. So over the pandemic, I was like, I'm black as hell. I'm making no excuses for being black. And so that's what I realized about the pandemic.
But that's what, I feel like we're saying the same thing essentially, right? Like that, so much of last year showed us that we have been trying to mimic and mirror things that did not reflect us, right? You know, like concepts and ideas and constructs that didn't serve us, 2, that didn't reflect us, and 3, certainly did not affirm us, right? And in that pause, we realized that we were doing these things, you know, and we didn't have to, right? I mean, you know, when we talk about white supremacy, it's now even white people like, white supremacy. I didn't see it before, but now I do. You know, and I think, you know, all of that is really crucial to, you know, again, like Bell Hooks always talks about, like radical self-love, right? You know, that silence, that stillness, you know, that taking that moment back, taking that time back, taking that space back for yourself, to honor yourself, to think about yourself, to affirm yourself, and those that look and feel and think and be like you, like that's resistance. Yeah.
And I mean, rest is revolutionary. Like, I can't tell you how much I have rested during this pandemic. Because, you know, it's go time. You know, in academia, man, we doing stuff, having meetings, man. Ain't nothing stopping my rest. Like, rest is revolutionary. I'm going to get my rest on. I'm going to get my chill on.
You teaching your classes from bed?
No. Because I will go to sleep. I'll be like, and white supremacy. No, so I'm normally at the desk. But, you know, one of the things, you know, just about taking that time back is that I never took off. You know, like perfectionism, you know, those are white values. Like we don't try to be.
But it's also survival strategy too.
It doesn't work though. It doesn't work. That perfectionist spirit that gets inside of us that is based on this Western world concept of success. I actually take off now. Like, I can't tell you, I've been in higher ed for 26 years and I would never take off. Now, if I have to take off, you know, I take off.
Nah, I feel you, man. There's so many times I would need to sit still. But I would feel so guilty that I wasn't doing something. Like, oh, I need to be, you know, like I would be antsy, like
exactly,
you know,
anxiety.
And again, like you know, to your point, like that is, you know, again, like modeling a kind of social, economic construct that is not about us. It's not about serving us. It's about us serving someone else's agenda, right? I always think about this this residency I did in like 2008 in South Africa. Is a residency called a Caversham residency. It's a printmaking residency. But the first day when we arrived, we had a morning meeting with the director of this program. His name is Malcolm Christian. And we sat around and we talked a little bit about the program and what we would be doing. But then Malcolm told us, this was like 9 in the morning. He was like, for the next 24 hours, you're not allowed to talk. We don't talk to each other. I don't want anybody to do any work. We're going to spend the next 24 hours in complete silence, right? And he started talking about breaking down this idea of inspiration, right? And linking like breathing to inspiration, right? And so he's like, you know, this moment of silence, this 24 hours of silence is about an inhale. Okay. So don't think about anything. Don't try to make anything. Don't talk to anybody. Just be silent. And just be still, be silent. And it ended up being one of the most productive and powerful experiences that I've ever had. I don't think anybody has ever forced me to be silent before that time, right? But it showed me the power of stillness, right? And the necessity of stillness. Again, to that point of like, we, you know, our parents and their parents and generations and generations, you know, before literally worked their bodies to death. You know, you know, our fathers weren't able to express and be vulnerable with us because they were at work.
I know.
You know what I'm saying? And even when they were at home, right? Like it was, you know, they were trying to do everything that they could do to like make sure the lights were on and that everybody ate, and you know what I'm saying? So they sacrificed themselves for, you know, without taking that space to actually be still for a moment and realizing the restorative power in that stillness. And I think that is something that we really have to learn to not only how to work with, but to embrace and make a part of our daily like routine.
I encourage everyone to create like your own personal healing suite, like, you know, a routine or a strategy that works for you. So mine starts with sweet tea, you know what I'm saying? It's gonna be some jazz, you know, I'm gonna burn some incense. I'm just gonna meditate, you know, I might do some yoga, but just reflection, man. You know, like I often say, you have to sit in the corner of yourself in order to get the messages that you need to get. And since I have been more still and, you know, implemented this restless revolutionary aspect in my personal life, like, you know, the ancestors speak to me in different ways, like the messages and the answers that I need in order to function, in order to get to the next stage of development in my life, I get them. Like my dad and grandmother visit me even more often now because I'm still enough to listen to the messages like, hey, I was trying to help you with that decision, but you want to run your ass around, you know what I'm saying? So, you know, just being still has had a lot of, you know, spiritual benefits for me too.
Yeah. I want to, I don't know what time we got? 17. Okay.
Oh, okay. We just selling in.
Yeah.
Now we gonna get ignorant for the last hour.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the experience of working on the project, and then open it up to our audience here to ask some questions.
Oh, I'm good.
So you're, as we mentioned earlier, you're one of the subjects in the in this project. And when we sat down to do the interview for the documentary, one of the first questions that I asked all of the subjects is, what is love?
Ooh, I remember that.
Right? Like, what is love? We throw that word out so often, and you know what I mean? Like it's you know, we use it, I think, without actually being considerate of its meaning. And so I, you know, here and now in front of everyone here, I don't know if your answer is different than what you
It may be different.
shared earlier when we did the project, but what in your
I was like,
mind, what is love?
I'm old as hell. I was like, I don't know what the hell I said in the movie. Hopefully it made sense to y'all that saw it. But I would say, for me, love is like a blanket. It's an emotional compass that kind of regulates you. Love is protection. You know, love is healing. Love is revolutionary. Like black people loving each other, expressing that love is the purest form of revolution that you can think of. Yeah. Because whenever we do and have this unmitigated black joy, blackness, somebody is gonna try to stop it. If me and you try to hang out and eat chicken wings and we bring 10 more brothers, police come. You know what I'm saying? Like, because that love that we express is the key to our freedom. So that's what love is me. It's a freeing aspect.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, that's literally like my thought about that question. Like, love is freedom, right? It's the ability to just be. Yeah. You know, we talk about love being unconditional and all these things, but all of that to me spells like freedom. You know, one of the other questions that I asked, you know, when we were doing this project as well, was, you know, has there been an experience in your life where another black man expressed or shared or articulated love to you in a way that was like transformative to you in your life? And in the documentary, you shared the story about your dad, you making a sacrifice to like submit all of these like applications.
Oh yeah,
for
yeah.
you,
A lot of people have referenced that. Yeah, the sister right here referenced that too.
But I wonder if there's if something else comes to mind for you in that regard.
Something else comes to mind. So, you know, before it was popular to support Ed Garnes and From Afros To Shelltoes, because you know you got to get a stamp of approval. You know, we're in America, so unless you get a certain stamp of approval, nobody gives a damn what you have to say. So early on in the founding of From Afros To Shelltoes, thank God for Killer Mike, because Killer Mike hooked me up with Dr. Cornel West's family and his producer, who has passed on the glory, rest in peace, Mike Daly, got me in contact with Cornel West's brother and his family. And so outside of my father, Dr. Joe White, my mentors, and all my other mentors, Cliff West and Dr. Cornel West's advice has been critical to me getting over the hump. And it's on my mind now because of what he went through at Harvard. God bless him for going back to Union. But I just remember a conversation with him and his brother in which, you know, Cornel told me, free black men have hell to pay. And I didn't know what he meant. I was like, well, hell to pay? Maybe I ain't got my hell bill yet. You know what I'm saying? But I cannot tell you how I have gone, you know, this was like at the founding of From Afro to Shelltoes almost 20 years ago. Like that advice from him and his brother, Cliff, has just resonated with me. And I think about the times, you know, especially with Cliff after his brother Cliff.
What was the advice?
The advice was free black men have hell to pay.
Okay.
Almost like a warning shot. Like, you know, I see where you going. You know, you talk real free, but there's a consequence to that. And, you know, I cannot tell you how that bit of advice from Dr. West and his brother Cliff, just in giving me the tools necessary to be able to, you know, being a leader, you know, or a black male leader is a lonely place, right? And so, you know, we often, you know, need that push, you know, that guidance, but that has just resonated with me. And that's the essence of love. And then I remember when my father died and talking to Cliff West and just filling in those gaps. You know, that's love. When someone can fill a gap for you or hold space for you in order to talk about, you know, your emotions. But that has stayed with me. Like every day of my life, I tell my students that are black, free black men have hell to play, get ready. And so that was love outside of my family.
I'm trying to think of, like, I have to give a shout out to my cousin Jabril.
Okay, okay.
And if you know me, you know my cousin. Like, that's my...
And he don't play.
He, not only has he always shown like his love, but the way he models love, like I've never seen anyone be as free as him. Like, you know what I mean?
I know
like,
what you mean.
And so even without saying, I love you, which he says all the time anyway, but even without saying that, just seeing how he moves in the world has been like one of the biggest inspirations to me. Like I remember when, like, we didn't grow up together. We met when I was, I think I may have been like 20, 21 or something like that.
Oh man, I thought y'all,
oh no.
Y'all are at the hip.
But it's never been a moment, like from that time, it's never been a moment where we, you know, like even when, like I went to stay with his family in New York for a summer. And I got to their house before he got home from school. Yeah. And Fahamu's here? Yeah. Now, mind you, we didn't know each other. My cousin's here? And it was on from that moment. Like, you know, he always like just embraced me. But I think about these moments that we've had where he has gone out of his way to do or show how much he loves me, right? So like, for example, when I first started like my career as an artist, you know, like trying to get my work out there and stuff like that. I'm here in Atlanta, he's in New York. This dude was everywhere in New York. Like, you have a gallery? Oh, you should meet my cousin. He's an artist. Oh, you're an artist? Oh, you should meet my cousin. I don't think there's anybody in New York, in the 5 boroughs, who don't know that his cousin is an artist, right? Like he talked me up so much that the gallery that I ultimately started showing with in New York was like, okay, I'm tired of this dude talking about his cousin. Let me look him up.
Let's see if he can do it.
And that really like that conversation that he had with this dude drunk at a bar in New York, like he never, you know, strangers, like, you know, became how my career got started because of Jabril, like, yeah, my cousin's an artist, you know? I remember another time when I was going through my divorce, and I had to go to Miami for like Art Basel, and Jabril was there. He picked me up at the airport. And I never forget, we were driving from the airport, he pulled over to the side of the road, and he pulled me out of the car. And he was like, what are you doing with your life? Do you know what it, like, I mean, like screaming on me in the street.
Yeah,
and he was like,
okay.
I just needed to look in your eyes and make sure that you're not making a big mistake. And I was like, this dude loves me. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
No, that's
like,
love.
he was ready to take his shoe off.
Yeah.
and whoop my ass on the side of the highway. You know, but it's that kind of, like that love, like always makes me check myself. Like, I'm like, okay, wait, I don't want to piss Jabril off. Let me make sure my shit is together. You know what I mean? And that kind of love is powerful. Like, you know, because I didn't grow up with people saying that or modeling that for me, right? So it's like to see that someone would sacrifice and give so much of themselves for my well-being it's powerful shit.
Yeah, you know, I thought of another one too, like just having my brother Kevin Powell. I don't have an older brother.
I talked to Kevin yesterday.
Okay, yeah, so my brother Kevin Powell, what he has meant in my life, man, you know, because you know I'm kind of headstrong, so you need somebody to be like, pump the brakes, you know, let's think about this. Having that brother in my life, that's love. Like I consider him like an older brother. My son calls him Uncle Kevin, but you know, just having somebody that has blazed the trail as a leader, activist, you know, when you get, you know you have made it as an activist, black male activist, when you get the death threats, you know. I want to kill your little black ass, okay? So when those messages came, having someone like him in my life to really talk through the trauma of that, that's love.
Right.
And so like that relationship has meant, whoo, I'm getting emotional now. Like I said, I'm not gonna cry in public. You know what I'm saying? But that's love. When you can be at your lowest, you can express the highs and lows. Like that's love.
Yeah, that's what's up. Well, look, man, there's people here. They're looking. Feel like we should have a conversation with them. You know, if anybody has any questions, like the floor is open. We're happy to take questions. Yeah. I did, yeah. I ended up doing therapy many years ago, and it ended up being one of the most powerful experiences I ever had. Like I'll never forget one day, and the therapist that I saw was a black man. His name was Dr. Carter. I think it was Alan Carter. Okay. He was older brother, and I remember one day, you know, after going to him for like a few weeks and stuff like that, and like talking, he gave me this assignment. He was like, I want to give you a homework assignment. He said, what are you afraid of? What is your biggest fear? And I had never thought about that before. Yeah. You know, and I thought about it, and when I went back to him, by the time I went back to him, I kind of realized what my biggest fear was. But my biggest fear was not mattering. You know what I'm saying? Like that I would, you know, like because he, in fact, he was like, you're an artist. I want you to draw it out for me, like what your biggest fear is. And the image that I drew was like a unmarked tombstone. Oof. You know, like that I existed, but there was nothing, you know, I didn't do anything, you know. And he was like, now that you know, what are you gonna do? You know? And it like triggered me to, okay, I gotta do shit, I gotta make it count. Like I have to make it count. Like everything that I do, I have to make it mean something. And, you know, part of the reason that he brought that up to me because, you know, he was like, you know, throughout our sessions, you talk about all these things that this person did and why this, you know, but what are you doing now to remedy that, right? And that was transformative for me. Like it really changed my perspective because, you know, kind of like what I was saying earlier, I realized that what happens with my life is not based on something that, you know, happens, but what happens going forward, right? What am I going to do to change it? Yeah.
Peace, y'all.
Peace, bro.
I appreciate you sharing yourself in this way in vulnerability. You know what I'm saying? It's always great to see reflections of black men doing such. And so I came in late, not trying to be stereotype shit.
No. This is a safe space, or should I say a brave space?
I'll touch for this, right? But I wanted to know what your feelings would be about how do we heal the connection between black men across gender and sexuality.
Ooh.
What I find is that I often want to be in the same space with my reflection and my brothers and my sisters.
Yeah.
But I have so much trauma in my reflection.
Ooh.
And because we don't talk about the fact that even though I'm showing up fabulous as fuck, when I step out there, they see me as a black man.
Exactly.
And I honor my black maleness, but I also my divine feminine. So where is the space where all of those things can come in safe space?
Well, first, let me do this.
Thanks, brother. Love you. I love you. It's all right, bro.
So I'll take this one. Can I go first?
Yeah, go for it.
Because this, you just got me, brother. Because you know I'm an educator, right? And you know I am a TA for a gender class, right? And so one of the things that we as black men cannot do, and what we have still failed to do, patriarchy is real, right? So white supremacy infects us too. So the toxic masculinity that we see from white men, like my brother Kevin Powell would say, we often incorporate these bootleg definitions of white masculinity and try to pass it off on each other. The thing that my mom did for modeling the way for me is that one of the early writers she gave me was James Baldwin. Now, she didn't use the word, you know, gay. You know, I'm trying to think of what word she used. It was very powerful. You know, it was something that made me not like think he was different. But as I started exploring, I was like, you know, Mom is, you know, what's going on? And she, in a loving way, just expressed that, you know, he loves brothers the same way you love sisters. And I was like, oh, but her giving me that and modeling that. And then my mother had a friend named David who reminded me of James Baldwin. So I grew up knowing this is another brother. This is another black man. So she modeled that in me. And so what I have always tried to do for black people is that I don't care what your gender, what your expression, if you're non-conforming, we black. And we can ill afford to isolate anyone in our community, especially other black men. And so the reason why I gave you a hug is because that's taboo. You know, I consider myself heterosexual. I don't know how you identify, but it might be outside the norms of heterosexual. I can give you a hug. That doesn't mean that my masculinity is threatened. So I think we have to be all embracing of however a black person come through the door. And for brothers, you catching hell just like me. Because when the police pull behind us, they like, oh, let me see if he has education. Does he have a master's degree? How does he identify sexually? They got whooping our ass. And so the way that we can show love is by modeling it. You know, and I try to live my life that way. Like everything that I do has a certain level of respect for all brothers. And so like I like to let my work talk. So you will see reflected in my work, I'm down for everybody. And that's what we got to do.
For sure. I'm just going to add to that my definition of love again. Freedom. When you love yourself, you don't feel the need to like judge or oppress or do anything, you know, any of that other shit to other people, because love is love. Everybody, I don't like, for me, love is freedom. That's it, period. Freedom. Free to be you as you. I'm free to be me as me. We could be free together. Like, love is love.
And then, you know, I have to say hip hop has contributed to that. You know, Mr. C, the DJ, it's what Mr. C was I won't say if he was instrumental. He was in the Biggie's early story, right? But he has had sexual relationships and relationships with other men. And so how hip hop treats that, you know what I'm saying? We have a gender problem in hip hop. We have a toxic masculinity thing in hip hop. So if you identify with that, there's not a lot of space for you as well. So we have to kind of break that wall down. Because he should be able to express himself and still be considered a card-carrying member of hip hop. But hip hop does not even allow for gender flexibility or sensibility, however you want to say it.
I think that's changing too.
It's changing, yeah.
You had your hand?
Yeah, I did have a question.
And what's your name, brother? I'm sorry.
Rahiem.
Rahiem.
Nice to meet you.
Right on, brother.
Thanks for expressing that. That is very important because, I mean, issues with sexuality and gender, I mean, these undertones that are going on, it causes violence. And I think that education definitely needs to be had around it so that we can prevent situations from escalating into violence because they do with these small little undertones of racism and sexuality and all that stuff. It's going to take some real education. You know, patriarchy and white supremacy are hand in hand.
Oh, yeah. They dance like that.
That's a little bit too rhythmic.
Oh, too real.
It's almost like you can't dismantle one without dismantling the other. But anyway, my question was around like gang culture because I find that, you know, during the pandemic I've gotten close with a lot of people, not anybody that would be in the gang, even if they were, then that's their thing, that's not mine, you know what I'm saying? I love them regardless. But like I'm supposed to. But I find that it seems like a lot of us have an innate need to express love and be devoted, express that loyalty towards people. You know, and a lot of times what we're dealing with now is everybody expects something from each other, and if you don't give it to them, then they don't love you, and that's not a real definition of love. So I'm wondering how could we go about, I don't know, taking that love out from that, because the people that are devoted to the gang culture, I mean, they are devoted to it. You can't even say nothing to them about their gang, or they will hurt you. And I feel like that's the kind of love we need to have for each other.
Oh, okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, what y'all think about that? Help me out.
I'm going deep. Okay.
There's when you brought up gang culture, it reminded me of this documentary I saw some years ago. It's called Bastards of the Party. If you haven't seen it, I strongly advise watching it. It's called Bastards of the Party, and it's about gang culture. It's a documentary that was, created and directed by a gang member. Essentially, he does this research because he was like, looking around and realizing that all these brothers that he has so much love for, right, are getting killed in this gang violence. And he's like, where did this shit come from? Like, you just get inducted into it, but nobody ever asked the question, like, how does this start? How did this start? And so he does the work, he does the research, and he ultimately uncovers that, like, the gang culture as we know it now really sort of was birthed in the destruction of the civil rights movement and groups like the Black Panther Party and blah blah blah, but that the gangs were initially formed to protect the neighborhoods, right? And so you had these brothers who saw like police beating up people in the neighborhood, or other gangs, white gangs, coming into their neighborhoods and attacking them. And so they formed their own gangs, or clubs, as they used to be called, to help protect one another. But ultimately, as a result of, the drug epidemic and all these kinds of things like that, those gangs became families for a lot of young men, right? Like, that this was a place where you can find that love and support, and you could be vulnerable, and you can have a community of people who had your back, right? And so it's sort of like catch-22. The violence that we see and that we attribute to gang culture, is clearly and intentionally, a result of like white supremacy, but the gangs themselves are really around creating spaces for people to come together and have a sense of community where they didn't have one. And so it's a really like powerful kind of thing, right? It's a really powerful space, and even amongst a lot of the gangs, like I don't know how accurate this is because I don't really deal with any gang kind of stuff like that, but I have been seeing things where like, you know, Crips and Bloods are coming together to work together, you know what I'm saying? Like, like, you know, this killing each other shit is not serving us, especially when we're being attacked from the outside, right? So how can we align our forces to really do the work that these gangs are supposed to be doing? And so it's really interesting to see the evolution of that, because I think even within the gangs, people were cognizant of the fact that this is self-destructive. This is not really serving us in any kind of way. How can we make this something that actually serves us? So it's an interesting evolution to watch, but I do strongly encourage you to watch that documentary.
Yeah, I just wanted to answer your question. It's a simple answer, but it's complicated in how it manifests itself. But people are attracted to gangs for a simple principle. Human recognition is a key point in the psychological development, having your humanity affirmed. And so when you're dealing with an oppressive system, you attach poverty, you attach unstable family life.
Toxicity.
You are looking for your humanity to be affirmed. And one of the things that gangs and gang culture do is they affirm your humanity. Mm-hmm. And also they reward excellence. So whoop his ass. You might be my lieutenant. Sell these drugs. I'm gonna give you a little bit more. So if we take those same concepts for the gang and put it into legal activities, I think about what Killer Mike is doing with Crip Cola. Mm-hmm. You know, he's taking those same fundamental principles and creating legal activities around it, but human recognition. Why do black men drive cars and put all these money into rims that you can only see when the car is parked? They want their humanity affirmed. Why do black men get money, want houses, flashing, holding money on Instagram? They want their humanity affirmed. So that's really what gangs do. They give you that human recognition. Ooh.
I actually think barbers should take at least a course.
take my intro to psych course.
But because I think, you know, one of the things that I think is important is reevaluating how we value the kinds of services, right, that we have within our community, even if they're not, you know, they don't have a plaque on the wall that say they have a degree from X, Y, and Z, right? Mm-hmm. The innate ability of this person to be able to give you that listening ear, right? Give you that space, be able to give you counsel. Like, there's value in that, with or without a degree, right? I have this philosophy I've been working with for the last few years called trapidemia, that looks at the ways that we create and invent strategies for survival over and above the conventional or even legal sense of the word, right? Like the hustle mentality, the inventiveness and ingenuity, mm-hmm. and, you know, like that dude on the corner selling drugs, like, he's a businessman. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's figured out supply and demand and how to make that work. Yeah, it's not necessarily the most positive thing in the world, but there's brilliance in that. There's value in that, right? One of the things that was most interesting to me, you remember when dudes used to wear those big, like, white t-shirts? Yeah. You know, the big long white t-shirts? I remember somebody breaking that shit down to me why they did that.
Well, break it down to me. I still don't understand that. And I got a lot of degrees. I don't know what the hell that means.
So listen to this, right? So the reason that, like, it was a uniform.
Okay.
White tee, jeans, white sneakers. Everybody's wearing the same fucking thing. Cop rolls by. Yeah, the dude I saw is wearing the white jeans, a white t-shirt, jeans, white sneakers.
Goddamn.
Everybody's wearing.
Goddamn.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like it's camouflage, it's a uniform, but it's brilliant, right? It's like strategies for survival that go beyond what we think of.
Thank you for that. I didn't know.
As acceptable, as normal, right? And I think that in those ways, we have to reevaluate what we consider valuable, especially when it comes out of our community, because there are so many barriers that prevent that barber from going to get a degree in psychology. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean he don't have the skills.
Oh yeah.
That doesn't mean he doesn't have the talent or the innate ability to provide that kind of service to us. Yes, we should normalize therapy and doing all that kind of stuff, but we also shouldn't do it at the expense of those services already being provided to us in our spaces. You know what I mean? Like when we put the value back in our community, it changes our community as opposed to taking it out of our community in those kinds of ways. Well, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's what.
No, I thank you for that. I had no hell idea what the white tee was about. So, maybe that was the white supremacy inside of me as well. I answer it two ways. I'm gonna answer it as a black man, then as a black man that's a therapist. So as a black man, I would say we have to normalize not just therapy, but therapeutic conversations. And so most of the information, if we were back in Africa and the Middle Passage messed up, I don't know where I'm from in Africa. I know I'm from there. Something about the Middle Passage messed that up. But there's always been a griot, right? There's always been an elder or someone that does the oral history and gives you what we would call in counseling coping strategies, strategies for living, help you with behavior modification and these types of things, right? So we have to understand that we've always been quote unquote in therapy, like what your barber does, what your grandmother has tried to do, what your coach has tried to do, are all the elements of basic psychology. Now, as an African-centered therapist, when therapy is presented to us, it's presented to us in white eyes, right? So they talk about, Freud and the unconscious mind that has nothing to goddamn do with our experiences and our values, right? So what we have to normalize is that we have intuitive skills, psychological strengths, like I said before, improvisation, resilience, connectedness to others, spirituality, all these things already inside of us that need fine tuning. And so what the whole purpose for me founding From Afros to Shelltoes, my organization, was to make psychology and development sexy for hip hop heads and for my generation. And so how do I do that? I have conversations called sweet tea ethics. I don't say, hey, we're gonna do behavior modification. I'm gonna change your cognitions in order to get better behavior. I'm gonna say, look, we having a sweet tea ethics session. I'm gonna have some wings. If you drinking, we got that. We got some sweet tea. But what we're having is therapeutic conversations. And also how you normalize therapy. All therapy is a conversation in which someone reflects back to you what your stuck points are.
Right. What you said.
What your stuck points are. That's all therapy is, right? So I give you back your stuck points, and then we analyze what are my thought processes and emotions that lead to certain behaviors. Okay, when I get upset because white supremacy is on me, I beat my wife. Wow, you helped me make that particular connection. So now when that's coming, what is an alternative thing I can do from beating my wife? Maybe I listen to jazz. Maybe I listen to sweet tea. So maybe I drink sweet tea. So I come up with alternatives so I can have better outcomes. That's all counseling is. How can I get better outcomes? So I've always tried to demystify therapy. And the question that you have, every brother I have ever counseled has said, I'm not talking about shit in here. I ain't doing no therapy. But then when I say, you play sports? Yeah, I play sports. You ever talk to your coach about, things going on in your life? He's like, yeah. Your grandma ever tell you? I said, you've been in therapy. Mm-hmm. You've had therapeutic conversations, so that's how we normalize it. It's not something that is not innate in you as a black person. It's changing that paradigm, so we're not talking about these white supremacist notions of how we see the world. And so when you put it in black terms, everybody go to therapy. Because didn't that sound good? When y'all like, oh my God, let me go to a therapist now and figure out why I can leave this dude alone I'm messing with. So that's all it is, just reframing. Hopefully that answered your question, brother. I'm sorry.
Appreciate it.
Based on the subject matter, any recommendations on people that are suffering with their ability to express love? Any exercises, techniques, tactics you guys would recommend helping people in those areas?
Yeah, I yeah, you did.
Yeah, he was like, I was about to go.
But you know, I got to shout you out too, though. This is my brother Kimbo right here. I didn't tell this story, but the first man to ever say "I love you" to me was you.
Oh damn.
I'll never forget that because that shit fucked me up too. But I think the way that we, to your question, the way we overcome that hurdle, right, is again by acknowledging the necessity of this space of love. We need that. You know what I'm saying? Like we need love. There ain't a nigga out here that is not looking.
What cuss word you need?
I had to think about it for a second. But there's not nary a one who does not seek and want love. Not a single person on this planet who does not seek out and want love. One of the most transformative realizations that I had in the recent years, like whenever I would do a talk or like a panel or any kind of thing, I would always be dumb nervous. You know what I'm saying? Like I have to drink, to try to, get myself in that space. I'd be so nervous and so intimidated. Until it occurred to me that every single person is just as nervous, just as uncomfortable, just as awkward as I am. Oh shit, I can do this.
You do it well, brother.
You know what I mean? Like, I think, to that, I use that as an example to, again, talk about this question of, like, how do we get to a place where we can overcome the hurdle of love? It's just by acknowledging that everybody needs it. Everybody needs it, everybody wants it, and we're all going at it in different ways. We're all trying to get it in all kind of ways. Some people, stand in the mall, and when the girls walk by, they be like, "Hey, shawty, hey,
holla.
Holla, like we trying all kind of ways, right, to get that love that we seek reciprocated to us. Just accept that, and then it becomes normal, right? Like it's in the idea that it's difficult. It's in the idea that it's that it costs something, right? That we make it challenging, as opposed to realizing that everybody needs it, everybody wants it, and it's there. It's there. It exists. It exists. You may not get it from everybody, but you're gonna get it.
I would say to Brother Kimbo, you said exercises, right? All right, so I'm also a writer. I've been a writer for a long time. I wear many hats. A lot of y'all might not know I'm also a writer, right? So I would say one exercise as far as getting your emotions out, have a particular individual journal for 5 to 7 days. Just free writings, just journal, right? Find someone that you respect and love to share the emotional content of what has happened to you the past 5 and 7 days. Like that's one exercise. And then another exercise I'm giving you 3. Okay, so that's the first one. Journal for 5 to 7 days. Talk about your emotions. Don't edit. It can be stream of consciousness. I don't know what the hell I'm thinking today, but I'm fucked up. Anything. 5 to 7 days. Get somebody you love and respect and trust to share that with and have a conversation. Second assignment to do. I really feel like a counselor right now. Let me put on my black hat because I really sound like I'm in class. Second one is this is your last speech. So write a speech as to how you wish to be remembered. You can never talk again. This will be how you remember through the end of time, and write a speech out. Last speech. This is the first assignment that I would give you at Spelman when I taught public speaking at Spelman. This is your last speech, how you will be remembered. And what happens when you do that, you will understand what you value the most and what your issues are, based on what you're saying about yourself and how you want to be remembered in death. Everything that you feel in that moment and how you look at yourself will be reflected in that speech. And then the third exercise is letter to my former self. So pick an age. If you're in your 30s or 40s, go back to 21-year-old self. Write a letter to your former self. Like, you could talk about traumas you experienced, how you've overcome. If you only knew, that the key to liberation for black people was just to love your damn self. Like, letter to former self would be the third assignment.
Can I add one more to that?
Go ahead.
It just occurred to me because I think about the mirror over there.
Oh, yeah.
To look at yourself in the mirror, like to really look at yourself in the mirror and forgive yourself.
You're gonna make me cry.
I think a lot of people choke on the things that they feel guilty with themselves about. You can't love anybody if you don't love yourself. So forgive yourself.
Yes, sir. I can post it. Yeah, I can post it. So my brother, what's your name that asked me about normalizing? That was therapy right there. Like those, even though those are not, even though those are not necessarily therapeutic assignments, I give those assignments to clients that I just gave Kimbo. Yeah, thank my mom. My mom is a noted librarian, won the Zora Neale Hurston Award for Black Children's Lit. So it came from her having me write, exposing me to these things very young. I was always doing a book report or writing something. You can do it. Take all your Netflix time, all your I'm sick of the white man time, and write. I've had people fill up a notebook in 5 or 7 days.
Any other questions? Because if not, we're going to...
This is great. Come on, guys.
Thank y'all. Big shout to my brother Ed. Love you, man. Thank y'all for tuning in. Appreciate everybody. We'll keep the exhibition open for a few more minutes. There's 2 parts to the exhibition. There's an interactive display right here, and then there's a documentary that lasts about 20 minutes long. So, enjoy, and thank y'all again. Appreciate you.
Oh, thank you.